In 1975, an engineer working inside Kodak built something extraordinary. It weighed about 8 pounds. It captured black and white images at a resolution of just 100 by 100 pixels, and saving a single photograph took roughly 23 seconds. The image wasn't stored on a memory card, it was recorded onto a cassette tape. By today's standards, it sounds almost ridiculous. But this machine was the world's first self-contained digital camera, and Kodak built it. That fact creates one of the strangest stories in business history, because Kodak wasn't destroyed by a technology it never saw coming. It helped create that technology. And even more surprisingly, Kodak didn't simply ignore digital photography afterwards. It developed digital technology. It sold digital cameras. It invested billions trying to transform itself. And in 2006, Kodak EasyShare cameras were #1 in US digital camera unit market share. Then just 6 years later, Kodak filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. So what happened? How does a company help invent the future, successfully sell products from that future, and still fail to survive it? The answer is much more interesting than the usual story that Kodak simply refused to go digital, because Kodak did go digital. The real problem was that digital photography was destroying the economics of the business that had made Kodak powerful in the first place. And Kodak never built a replacement strong enough to overcome what it was losing. To understand why, we have to go back to the business Kodak originally created. In 1888, George Eastman introduced the Kodak camera with a simple promise: you press the button, we do the rest. Before products like Kodak's, photography was complicated and cumbersome. Eastman's idea was to make taking photographs simple enough for ordinary people. The customer took the picture. Kodak helped take care of what came afterwards. And over time, Kodak built an enormous business around far more than cameras. It sold film, photographic paper, chemicals, processing equipment and services. Every time somebody wanted to take more photographs, the system created another opportunity for Kodak to make money. The camera was important, but the repeat business surrounding the camera was enormously valuable. Buy film, take photographs, process them, print them, then buy more film, and start again. For decades, that model worked extraordinarily well. Then something happened inside Kodak's own laboratories that threatened the entire system. In the 1970s, Kodak engineer Steve Sasson began experimenting with a relatively new type of electronic image sensor called a CCD. By December 1975, he had assembled a working device using a camera lens, batteries, electronic circuitry, a CCD sensor, and a cassette recorder. It could capture an image, turn that image into digital information, and store it electronically. No photographic film was required. The image was tiny, 100 pixels by 100 pixels, about 1/100th of a megapixel. It was black and white, and storing it took around 23 seconds. This was nowhere near ready to replace a consumer camera, but the underlying idea was revolutionary. A photograph no longer had to begin with film, and that created an obvious long-term threat to Kodak's existing business. If cameras eventually became fully digital, customers wouldn't need a new roll of film every time they wanted to take more photographs. Traditional photo finishing could shrink. Demand for photographic paper and chemicals could shrink with it. The technology Kodak had helped create had the potential to remove entire parts of Kodak's traditional revenue stream. But here's where the famous version of this story gets something important wrong. Kodak did not spend the next 3 decades pretending digital photography didn't exist. It continued developing digital imaging technology. In 1991, Kodak introduced its professional digital camera system, or DCS, which used a Nikon F3 camera equipped by Kodak with a 1.3 megapixel sensor. Kodak developed digital imaging patents. It built digital cameras. It sold digital photo printers. It built retail photo kiosks. It developed online imaging services. And in the early 2000s, its EasyShare digital cameras became extremely popular. By 2006, Kodak EasyShare cameras were #1 in US digital camera unit market share. That's worth repeating. Kodak helped invent the digital camera, then became the #1 digital camera brand in America by units sold, and still ended up in bankruptcy, which tells us immediately that the simple explanation, Kodak refused to go digital, cannot explain what actually happened. The deeper problem becomes clearer when you look at the numbers. Across Kodak's businesses, digital product sales were growing rapidly. During the first 9 months of 2005, Kodak reported roughly $5.1 billion in digital product sales. That was up 38% from the same period a year earlier. At the same time, sales of Kodak's traditional products fell to roughly $5 billion. That was down 18%. So the transition was happening. Faster digital was growing. Traditional photography was shrinking. But Kodak's gross profit margin was also falling. During those same 9 months, Kodak's overall gross profit margin dropped from 30.6% to 26.8%. Kodak specifically identified negative price and product mix, including pressure involving consumer digital cameras, as one of the major reasons. That is the part of Kodak's story that matters. Replacing film revenue with digital revenue was not enough. The economics were different. With film photography, a customer kept coming back for more film and more processing. With a digital camera, the customer could take hundreds or thousands of photographs without buying another roll of anything. Take a bad picture, delete it, take another, move the photographs onto a computer, store them digitally, share them electronically. A digital camera sale could be valuable, but it did not automatically recreate the stream of repeat purchases Kodak had enjoyed in the film era. And while Kodak was trying to make that transition, it was also having to dismantle huge parts of the old company. Its restructuring was enormous. Kodak's 2004 to 2007 restructuring program eventually contemplated roughly 27,000 to 28,000 position reductions. The company expected restructuring charges in the region of $3.4 to $3.6 billion. Factories and infrastructure built for the film era had to be reduced. Costs had to come down. Thousands of jobs disappeared. Kodak wasn't sitting still. It was trying to rebuild itself while simultaneously shrinking the business that had supported it for generations. And being successful in digital cameras didn't solve the problem. Consider what happened in 2006. Kodak's EasyShare cameras were #1 in US unit market share. Yet Kodak reported that sales in its digital capture and devices business actually fell 13% from the previous year. Part of that decline came from lower volumes and unfavorable price and product mix. In other words, being #1 by units sold did not guarantee that Kodak had discovered a spectacularly profitable replacement for film. And Kodak knew it needed more than cameras. The company invested heavily in other digital businesses. It expanded into commercial printing. It acquired companies. It developed consumer inkjet printers. It used its intellectual property and digital imaging patents to generate licensing revenue. By 2010, Kodak said digital products accounted for about 3/4 of its revenue. And when Kodak entered Chapter 11 in 2012, the company said approximately 75% of its 2011 revenue had come from digital businesses. Think about how different that is from the popular myth. Kodak didn't enter bankruptcy as a film company that had somehow forgotten digital technology existed. By then, most of its revenue was already coming from digital businesses, and it still wasn't enough. By 2011, Kodak's financial position had become increasingly difficult. The company reported that it had suffered net losses from 2008 through the first 9 months of 2011. To meet its liquidity needs, Kodak said it had relied on cash reserves, intellectual property licensing, selling assets and businesses, and issuing debt. And in its own filings, Kodak described the problems it was facing: aggressive price competition, the continuing decline of its traditional film businesses, the cost of restructuring the company, the investment required to grow businesses such as consumer and commercial inkjet, and uncertainty around intellectual property licensing. This wasn't one bad product launch. It wasn't one executive making one catastrophic decision. It was a company caught in an extremely difficult transformation. Its old business was shrinking. The replacement businesses required investment. Competition was intense. Restructuring cost billions. And Kodak was burning through the financial resources it needed to complete the transition. Then came January 19, 2012. Eastman Kodak and its US subsidiaries filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Kodak arranged a debtor-in-possession credit facility of up to $950 million to provide liquidity while it reorganized. For a company that had helped make photography part of everyday life, it was an extraordinary fall. But Kodak itself did not disappear. On September 3, 2013, the company emerged from Chapter 11 as a reorganized business focused primarily on imaging for commercial customers. The Kodak that emerged was very different from the consumer photography giant that generations had known. And this is why Kodak's story is more useful than the myth surrounding it. The easy lesson would be, never ignore new technology. But Kodak didn't ignore digital technology. It helped invent it. It continued developing it. It commercialized professional digital photography. It became America's #1 digital camera brand by unit share. And eventually, roughly 3/4 of its revenue was coming from digital businesses. Kodak saw the future. It participated in the future. What it could not do successfully enough was replace the economics of the world that future was destroying. The film business had been extraordinarily valuable because photography generated repeated demand for film, paper, chemicals, and processing. Digital photography stripped away much of that recurring consumption. And the digital businesses Kodak built faced different margins, different competitors, and relentless price pressure. By the time Kodak was generating most of its revenue from digital products, the company was already carrying the cost of years of restructuring, declining traditional businesses, repeated losses, and serious liquidity pressure. That is the real lesson. Seeing disruption early is not enough. Inventing the technology is not enough. And even selling the new technology successfully is not necessarily enough. A company also has to build a business model that can survive what its own innovation destroys. Kodak helped invent the digital future, but it never found a way to make that future replace everything the film era had given it.